The ongoing civil war of Christians not behaving like Christians online continues. In the recent weeks, we covered a situation of Pastor Mike Signorelli going on the Bible Dingers podcast, the chat completely being torched. I'm going to react to a clip of my favorite Calvinist reform guy. I know some of you guys are like, you don't like Calvinists. I love Calvinists. I love this Calvinist. We're going to look at his clip, and this will be more or less my response to the broader Christian YouTube community, but specifically, I was watching Corey Miner's stream earlier. I'm in the thumbnail. I'm not sure why I'm in the thumbnail. He was reacting to parts of the video, and I really couldn't follow where he was going. It was like, be above reproach and sound doctrine. I'm like, yeah, all that. Just don't be a jerk while you're trying to correct people. Don't insult people. Don't name call people. Don't go to the fringe cringe. Well, Gavin Ortlund did a great video that gets to the root of this sort of thinking. This video is called Fundamentalism 100 Years Ago versus Today. This is a brilliant video. You guys know I love Gavin Ortlund. He ended up catching some strays recently in a book that we covered, okay? And this is an interesting conversation. In a previous, you guys should really go, if you guys don't know what fundamentalism is, you should go and watch what fundamentalism is. He does a great job describing it. And I just kind of wanted to react to some of this. It gets really good. I want to say at the 32-minute mark or 31-minute mark, but we're going to pick up here. So the first part is he just talks about fundamentalism being willing to fight for the truth, which is a good thing. But this is where he gets into where fundamentalism goes wrong. And what you'll notice is as he's describing this historically and today, how prevalent this is everywhere you turn. Not just in Christian circles, beyond Christian circles, okay? We're going to jump into this. And really, you guys really should watch Gavin's entire video. He has a new book about why he's Protestant. He's coming on a channel, I think, in November. He's going to be out here in person.
Arrows, but just to put them on the table, try to think about this together. Here we go. I'll try to go fast, but I got a lot to say. Number one, fundamentalism often finds its identity in what it's against more than what it's for.
Ayo. That's not just Christian fundamentalism. That is the way to get poppin' making content today.
Oh, I didn't know we're doing a YouTube masterclass right now.
The way to get poppin' making content is to make content about what you're against. And we've intentionally not done that. And I would argue probably at the expense of our own growth and have pulled back to not make content about what we're against.
We just want to talk about the Shroud of Turin.
We want to talk about cool stuff that blesses people.
Archaeological finds.
So out of the rip, again, it's the 15-minute mark. You guys should go watch the whole video of this. Fundamentalism finds its identity in what it's against.
We see that in the church today. Yes. There are people who build massive social media platform doing nothing but attacking and tearing down other Christians.
Oh!
This man is unrestrained.
I might have to pull the ether music out for him as well. Go ahead.
Now look. Polemics is a part of faithfulness to the gospel. Amen. Sometimes people will say, look, your channel's called Truth Unites. Why are you criticizing purgatory? Why are you criticizing, it's truth unites. Being clear about what we're against is necessary. I'm not against theological polemics. But it's not healthy when that becomes your whole identity, when this is what gives you real passion and energy, when this is what draws an army to coalesce around you, and people are doing that today. Note the emboldened words in this verse from Jude. He says, I was eager to talk about salvation, but it was necessary to contend. This is how it should be. This should be the emotional prioritizations in our heart. Celebrating the gospel should be eager. We should be eager for that. Contending against error should be a matter of necessity. A lot of people reverse that. That's a fundamentalist tendency. And Marsden highlights how this tendency played out in fundamentalist evangelical split. He talks about how part of the evangelical heritage is more open and expansive, but part of what went into evangelicalism is, note these words, closed, cautious, and defensive. Now here's the thing. Any movement faces a tension between a positive identity radiating out from the center and a negative identity reinforced around the edges. Does that make sense? Think of the nucleus in the center and then the membrane. I'm kind of mixing an atom and a cell. Think of the heart and the skin, okay? You need the positive thing in the middle and you need the negative thing around the edges. Both are important. Al Mohler wrote a dissertation.
So you need to be able to protect from outside things, but you also need the thing from the inside going out.
Wow.
Right? And so he's getting at the fundamentalists invert the two.
So it's like I'm passionate about dunking on folks. And then, of course, we'll sound doctrines.
Jesus a little bit.
Yeah. Jesus is cool.
Yeah.
I love it. But
yeah, go ahead.
But have you seen the megachurch lately?
I think he finished it in 1989 on evangelical responses to Karl Barth. Did you know this? Many of us know Val Meyer from other things he's done, and I've appreciated various things that he has done, but I also appreciated this dissertation. A friend and I read through it many years ago. It's really interesting, and it brings up this question. He brings up the question of whether evangelical identity should be what he calls a boundaried or centered set of convictions. That's one way of getting at this. Should our identity be positive, coming out from the middle, or should it be negative, reinforced at the fringes? This is tricky. Both are important. Okay? So, for example, a church needs to have a statement of faith that you have to sign on to be a member there and receive the Lord's Supper and so forth. But when someone first walks into the church, what they're experiencing isn't just a statement of faith. They're getting a sense of the core values, the overall vibe of the church, and so forth. A fundamentalist tendency is to focus so much on these edges, so much, and it gets defensive, and it gets fear-based. And it's more about kind of a negative posture towards the enemies out there than actually a positive, constructive celebration of the gospel. So we need the positive, constructive celebration of the gospel. That comes first, then that flows out into our polemics. So many people are getting this order wrong today. I mean, I could go on about this, but let me just hit the main point. May I speak with a little bit of passion here? Church of 2024, it is time to build and not just tear things down. We are in a time of colossal disintegration. We need new institutions. We need new efforts at constructive, positive gospel work. This is what I want Truth Unites to be about. It even goes into the title of my YouTube channel. I want to give my life to something constructive. You know, it's like when you plant seeds in the ground and then 50 years later, with enough water and rain, you got something where birds can perch in it. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to put out a library of videos that can serve and meet needs and promote gospel assurance. But that's what I'm trying to do. I don't do it perfectly, but there is so much tearing down right now. Criticism, separation, drawing boundaries, denouncing. And like Jude said, that's necessary, but sometimes it seems like that becomes our identity. I think Galatians 5:15 is playing out on Twitter almost every day in the body of Christ. Richard Baxter said, be very careful when you have zeal for truth, because if you have zeal for truth, it can feel so good. But if you don't have love for the people that you're correcting, you can be used by Satan to tear people.
Be careful when you have zeal for truth, because if you don't have that zeal matched with love, you can be used by Satan. He's cooking, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead and play a little bit more.
Tear down the church. Is that happening today? Am I blind? Or am I the only one who is seeing a lot of Galatians 5:15 in the body of Christ today? Here's the second danger of fundamentalism. Again, not to label, but to draw this out from the history, put it out there and say, this is happening. Let's work on it. Let's talk about it. And I'm not trying to back anybody into a corner. I'm trying to say, here it is. Let's talk about it. Number two, fundamentalism often fails to do theological triage. Triage is when we rank different doctrines according to their level of importance. What is good about fundamentalism is it's willing to fight, like we saw at the beginning of this. It courageously opposes a real enemy. Fundamentalism is fighting a real enemy. The problem isn't that the enemy is a phantom. The problem is it's doing it in the wrong way. And it becomes overly combative. It fights too much. Often it makes every hill a hill to die on, or at least too many hills to die on.
Okay. So when he says theological triage, he's talking about what are the doctrines that we would say are closed off from discussion. You know, close-handed doctrines versus open-handed doctrines, essentials versus non-essentials. And what he's getting at here is within the fundamentalist framework, everything becomes a hill to die on. Instead
Age of the earth.
He actually gets to that. We're going to go there.
Trinity and Age of the Earth are in the same.
They're not the same.
They're
not the same. And so someone like a Mike Signorelli or a Pagani who will have views, because they're Pentecostals, it is what it is, who will have differing views on something like tongues, on something like demonization, on something like healing. And people will conflate those views as if they're essential close-handed doctrines. And they're not. And everyone has their thing. And so, but what happens with a fundamentalist is whatever their community believes becomes the thing, and every issue is an essential issue, and everything is a hill to die on. Age of the earth. If you're not a young earth creationist, you're not really in. If you believe tongues can be spoken in public, you're not really in. If you and so if you're not a Calvinist, if you believe in a different soteriology, if you believe in these, and this is prevalent in most circles. This isn't just in Christian circles or in Protestant circles. This is in other circles as well. And so you have to know the difference in how to rank these issues. Right? Go ahead and play a little bit more of this.
So let me give some examples. In the history of 20th century fundamentalism, as it spills forward into the camps of evangelical and fundamentalist, let me identify two issues that become kind of litmus tests. These various issues come up, they become battle markers, they become testing points. They become symbolic, who are the friends and who are the foes. Two of them are biblical inerrancy and premillennialism. And I want to comment on both of these and basically say, these are not the same. Inerrancy makes a lot more sense to be one of those boundary issues, be one of those things that's the skin or the membrane or the edges. Premillennialism makes less sense. So inerrancy came up very early on.
So premillennialism is a eschatology view of the end times, right? You believe in a pre-return of Jesus and then the millennial reign. He gets he goes on to say, because I don't want to go super deep on this, you guys should go watch the full video, but he basically gets to a point where he says premillennialism is fairly modern, and people conflated it with inerrancy of Scripture.
Yikes.
And lines were drawn on people's orthodoxy if they were premillennial or not, at like famous universities.
That's insane.
Right?
Yeah.
And it is in like outside of like the last 1,500 years, folks weren't really premillennial. It's a fairly modern view. And then you add dispensationalism onto it. Yeah. So that's what he was getting at. You guys go watch the full video, but I do want to pull this up. This is really interesting.
Now we look back today and we might see this as, okay, that's kind of weird. But what are our grandchildren going to look back at us and say either we way underemphasize something or we were like this? Let me give an example. Listen. I cannot tell you how many times in the last 3 weeks somebody has called me a liberal or a wolf because I am not a young earth creationist.
He's not a young earth creationist.
So not only is he not a young earth creationist, but he is being called a liberal and a wolf. A wolf. A wolf is someone that's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Like, I'm out to get you.
I am here to get Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, I'm
gonna kill you, dog. I'm gonna eat you alive. That's what a wolf does.
Oh man, that's not good.
And so again, pick the issue. Pick the issue, and you see this all over.
Yeah.
We can't have strong and passionate disagreements on an issue. Go debate young earth creationism. I don't care. Go debate tongues. I don't care. I care when you start saying men of God who've been faithfully serving are wolves, are false teachers because you disagree with them on a secondary doctrine.
That's crazy.
Now watch what he does here. Go ahead.
Dozens as things play out over the last few weeks. I'll put out a tweet. It's like John 3:16. Someone says, wolf, you believe in millions of years, And that seems to be growing. That seems to be increasing. But I think it's basically a function of historical ignorance. It's just, let me just make the case real quick here as one representative example of where I'm concerned about an uptick of fundamentalist tendencies. Same thing as people fighting over pre-mill without being aware of how that has no historical backing. If believing in an ancient world and rejecting young earth creationism is liberal, then the following people are liberal. Charles Spurgeon, the great Baptist preacher, June 17th, 1855, he preaches a sermon. He doesn't even blink to talk about the millions of years before Adam. It's just not even an issue.
That's amazing. The millions of years before Adam, our planet has passed through various stages of existence. He just kept pushing.
This is Charles Spurgeon. So Charles Spurgeon is a wolf because he's not a young earth creationist. Keep going.
Like, you can just tell he's just throwing it out there. He's not even aware this is going to be controversial. Number 2, J. Gresham Machen. He wrote the book, Christianity and Liberalism. I'll recommend that more at the end. Hallmark defense of the fundamentals. And he's saying, certainly you don't have to be young earth. Number 3, Warfield and Hodge at Old Princeton, these staunch defenders of conservative Presbyterian orthodoxy, opposing higher criticism and liberalism. Number 4, the Schofield Reference Bible. It advocated for the gap theory, which is a species of old earth creationism. If it's liberal to reject a young earth, then the Schofield Reference Bible is a liberal document. Number 5, William Jennings Bryan. You know who he was? He represented the prosecution at the Scopes trial. He's a liberal, though, because he held to a day age view, okay? It wasn't even an issue in his day. But today we think that's liberal.
And notice, like, people don't even know this about a Charles Spurgeon. Yeah. So what's being presented, fill in the gap by whatever view, is this being presented with such certainty that everyone has believed this. Everyone has believed the earth is 6,000 years old. Everyone is a premillennial. Everyone is a fill in the blank. Everyone is a cessationist.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. These are minority positions. That's great. And the people in these camps present themselves as the authority while being the minority within the context of church history, and then will be willing to die on whatever hill and damn you to hell if you don't agree with them. Not everyone who holds these positions. Yeah. The fundamentalists that hold these positions.
The OG, the least suspecting person to hold a young earth creationist view, CP holds it. I'm right there with you, CP.
You're young earth creationist?
Depending on who I'm speaking to. You know?
Listen, there's nothing wrong with being a young earth. I think you guys are misunderstanding. If CP wants to be a young earth creationist, I'm not mad at anybody who's a young earth creationist.
Same.
The issue is not whether or not you're a young earth creationist. The issue is when you damn people, false teachers, heretics in wolf in sheep's clothing, because they're not a young earth creationist, or they're not premillennial, or they don't hold your view of tongues, or they don't hold your view of healing, or they don't hold your view of demonization. That's the issue.
Yep.
Go ahead.
R.A. Torrey. He was the fundamentalist editor of the book The Fundamentals, published from 1910 to 1915. It gave definition to the term fundamentalist. Lots of the contributors of the book are fundamentalists, and the book takes an old earth stance. You can see that from Torrey himself, and many of the other articles written in the text by fundamentalists like George Frederick Wright are explicitly advocating for an old earth view with potential and at times in their careers, various kinds of openness to evolution. That's among the fundamentalists, okay, let alone the evangelicals like Carl Henry and Gleason Archer and others. R.C. Sproul was the one who drafted the original Chicago Statement of Biblical Inerrancy, and he was commonly saying, I don't know how old the world is, the Bible doesn't tell us. The young earth creationist movement comes in more in the second half of the 21st century, and it's booming today, and people are just ignorant of church history. They don't realize this.
Now, I'm skeptical of anything that's modern. Premillennialism, dispensationalism, young earth creationism,
Protestantism.
That's 500 years old. That's a little older. Second Vatican Council, like anything that's modern, I'm skeptical of. Right?
Yeah. When was the Second Vatican Council?
Like 1949 or something.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Protestantism, which would be the argument of the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah.
They would be like, yo, you guys are mad modern.
Yeah.
And I would
Nerds.
say your Second Vatican Council was very modern. There's a split within your own church.
Hello.
Over it, right?
Historically been the membrane or the skin or the boundary of orthodoxy. So when people make that a litmus test today, I think that's unfortunate, and I think people don't even realize they're actually being more fundamentalist than historic fundamentalism. And by the way, the reason that's a real problem is because of the boy who cried wolf. There's a real thing that is heresy. So let's use the term heresy for the real heresies.
Right.
All right, here's a third danger of fundamentalism that I want to alert us to and encourage us to think about today. Fundamentalism often fails to exhibit the fruits of the Spirit. One fundamentalist tendency is not just to fight on too many hills, but to just fight in ways that lack charity and lack grace. To put it simply, fundamentalists can be jerks.
Hey.
My friend Gavin Ortland's a Calvinist, Reformed Calvinist. Just like the record to show that the Calvinists said that about the fundamentalist and a lot of the online behavior.
Now, reactions against fundamentalists can be mean-spirited as well. I mean, I would say progressive Christians have all the same temptations and all the same tendencies. So people on the far left are nasty, and you can see it. That's the polarization we're always worried about. But this is a hallmark temptation of 20th century fundamentalism, this overly antagonistic attitude. Okay, you can see Carl Henry, for example, lamenting a book by another conservative, which he calls theological atom bombing, which has as its result that as many evangelical friends as foes end up as casualties.
As many evangelical friends end up as casualties. Because you're just dropping nuclear bombs into your
Everyone's
relationships.
gone.
That as many evangelical friends as foes end up as casualties. Think about that. What a metaphor. Okay, what does it mean to do a theological atom bomb? A theological atom bomb is when I say, oh, look over there. There's an institution or there's a movement or there's a group of people and it has errors in it. Therefore, we just attack the whole thing. Anybody within the radius becomes criticized. Just drop a bomb over the whole thing, right? Anybody connected to it in any way.
So in Corey Miner's chat today, someone said, you're friends with Dr. Michael Brown. Dr. Michael Brown is friends with Sid Roth. Now, I've only heard the name Sid Roth. I've never checked out any of Sid Roth stuff. I'm not super familiar.
Sid Roth is friends with Kid Rock.
No.
Oh.
Kid Rock is friends with Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll's wife used to be a corn star. Therefore,
Michael Brown believes in corn. Oh, man.
Michael Brown is friends with Sid Roth. Therefore, you're indirectly endorsing a false teacher by being friends with Dr. This is a real thing someone said to me in a chat today.
Wow.
It's a real thing.
That was not Corey Miner. That was his chat.
That was his chat.
Wow, that's insane.
So because I'm friends with Dr. Brown is friends with someone that's sus. And by the way, me and Dr. Brown have disagreed about multiple friends of his that I think are sus. Privately.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you should make a video about it.
Right. But like, because I think you're could you imagine Dr. Brown meeting like my friends that just got out of jail?
He's like,
could you imagine? No, you remember these friends when they were around first and the type of stuff they were on.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes, I remember.
Could you imagine Dr. Brown come around and like, right?
I remember.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I could share that.
Share
it. I remember we're in the car with two of them, right? And one needed a ride to his new baby mama's house or baby mama to B's house or just a girlfriend. I don't know. One of those two. And he was fresh out of jail. He like somehow got a girlfriend right out of jail. And so we're driving there. And then I remember you're like casually talking like, hey, man, are you taking precautions? He's like, man, don't talk to me about that stuff, man. You're like, look, man, I'm just looking out for you. Like having a kid right now would be a disaster. You're trying to be very like pragmatic for him. And then he gets out and the other dude sees the girlfriend. He's like, that's in the car. He's like, she's fertile.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, they were a wild bunch. They were a wild bunch.
Right. So, and this is what, 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, this is like 6
right?
years ago, yeah.
So like I've had friends who are wild that and by the way, and
you're just trying to make sure they don't create broken homes. Like and the bare minimum.
But you know who's going to church now? That friend who I said that to?
Yeah.
You know who believes in Jesus now?
That's
that
right.
friend that I said that to?
That's a fact.
Right? And so it's like
married, got kids.
Married with a family, the whole bit, posted a picture of him and his lady on Instagram today.
Amazing.
Talking about, and this was a dude that was a womanizer.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like, you would then categorize Dr. Brown as endorsing womanizing because I have friends around me that are womanizers?
Yeah.
Like close friends that I've known since I was a child, I was 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the level of insanity to believe that because Dr. Brown is friends with someone I disagree with theologically, or I'm friends with someone that he would think is abhorrent morally, that somehow that is an endorsement is what Gavin is saying. It's spiritual atomic bomb dropping.
Yeah.
Anyone in proximity gets it because I disagree with this person.
Today, yes. Another thing that Marsden talks about in 20th century fundamentalism that was a temptation is second-degree separationism. Okay, what's second-degree separationism? This is when I say, okay, I need to disassociate from liberals, but over there is a moderate or over there is another conservative who isn't disassociating from the same liberals, so now I have to disassociate from them as well. Leave room here, right? For wisdom and charity, maybe in certain contexts you have to do that. For certain, this is extraordinarily complicated. Like, at what conference will you speak with another speaker who has different views? Leave room for this. Leave some grace for people to wrestle with those difficult questions. But you can see how, in an unrestrained expression, second-degree separationism leads to just this wanton splintering and fragmenting everywhere and suspicion everywhere. And the question, this whole question of when do you separate from others, huge question, huge complicated question, even within evangelicalism. You see it in the 1967 dispute between John Stott and Martin Lloyd-Jones. You see it in J. Gresham Machen's loss of conservative support in his missions work in the 1930s. My friend Radim Zoomer is always talking about, his whole thing, his concern is that we separate too much from the mainline denominations and their institutions and so forth. It's a complicated question. My view is sometimes you have to separate, but it's complicated to know when. But I'm not even going to try to take an opinion on that. I'm just observing the fundamentalist temptation and tendency to separate too much and in too much of an antagonistic way.
Right. And so I've gotten in trouble for doing a virtual event of 31 days of Proverbs in January by someone that was more prosperity leaning, who I've had very hearty offline conversations with, and
he was not a pastor.
Yep. And I'm doing a 31-day event, and there's people doing other days, not the same day, not an in-person event, not a conference we're selling tickets for, a free event. And I would be on one day, and then a Bill Johnson would be a week away, who I don't rock with Bill Johnson at all. Or what's his face?
Joel Osteen.
Joel Osteen was on the same event. Okay, virtual event, not in person, not a conference, not something, but Ruslan. So I'm like, well, why would I not want to share truth in those circles?
Yep.
Right? So I think it's the guilty by association fallacy at its finest. So anyway, I wanted to share that because I think this sort of stuff happens all the time. And I loved how well Gavin broke that down. And so if you guys want to see the full video, I'll try to link it below. Go watch the full video. Gavin breaks down what is a fundamentalist, what are the good things, what are they fighting for, yada, yada, yada. All that will be linked below. You guys can go watch it, and I think you'll find a lot of value in that. All right? Hey, thank you so much for checking out the video. Comment down below and let me know what you think. And be sure to check out this video that YouTube is recommending just for you. Let me know if they nailed it. All right? I'll see you over there. Peace.